data, free WhatsApp, all of those things, because you selected the one for 2,000 bob, you can get those things.
Yeah.
And Safaricom has understood that you don't want to be at the airport looking for a cab and you can't find one, or calling somebody who can pick you up and you can't reach them, or trying to send a message on WhatsApp and it doesn't happen, or trying to even look for the website of the person who,
Nothing.
It will never happen again, because you selected the all-in-one option with Safaricom, and you can go monthly for 30 days. You have access to all of these great things, and you never have to be stranded again. Freedom, I'm telling you, is what you buy. Dial today. We could also help you with a 3,000 shillings. You know why? If you dial that and you send us a screenshot of how you subscribe to the go monthly all-in-one option, we could give you 3,000 shillings.
Kapisa? Like that. Wajiro Kekonyo is looking at you like, hi.
It's actually true.
Do not ask me what was going through my mind. There is a term called SAI, socially accountable investing. Companies in Kenya need to invest accountably and not to invest in dodgy deals. Yes, so that is what was going through my mind because of some of the names.
You have gone elsewhere. We are talking about
in a bidi.
We are talking
it
about
is my reality.
So now we are telling
you know, life is joined like this.
See, you know, like
my life in the morning and in the evening is joined to my circumstances at work, at home. So ukisikia kitu, you must remember accountability applies to all the time.
Okay, so like now me, when you and me were talking on the phone, would you want the credit to finish?
No, I don't want it to finish, but I might be choosing my provider in a discerning manner, because there are issues that have come to my attention
provider will not sort
that
you out like
we
this.
must deal with. Yes. I will not go beyond that, because
welcome.
I value you, but yes, it's a bidi. We need to look at things.
Welcome, Wajiro. How are you doing?
I am very well.
Okay.
I'm well in the Gen Z era, because we're in the Gen Z era. We are remembering the fallen heroes. We are remembering those who are still abducted. I think maybe there is 35 people not accounted for. We are remembering those not accounted for. There are bodies in the mortuary that have not gone through the due processing because of a kind of go slow and cover up. We are remembering that we have a constitution. We're a constitutional democracy, and we have leaders who have forgotten that. But despite that, we stand strong, and we say viva, power to the people all the time.
Very good. Now, Wajiro is a transformative governance advocate.
Exactly.
And a coach.
Yes.
Harambee Stars ama
Gor Mahia.
How are they performing? I can own them or
which
not.
Which team are you coaching?
I can't say. Who is top of the league so that I can own that one?
Arsenal.
Don't listen to you.
Welcome, though, Wajiro.
Thank you very much.
City says hi. He said hi yesterday. Right now he's sleeping.
Tell him my heart is broken.
He is spending his time chilling.
Tell him my heart is broken. We needed to discuss these issues.
He gave me the proverb to give you.
All
the
right.
proverbs for this week are from Senegal. 3 kinds of people die poor. Those who divorce, those who incur debt, and those who move around too much.
CT added that last bit. Okay.
What do you think?
Well, Senegal is a country that has recently gone through a revolution. And they have, I think, a millennial for president, rejected the old guard. And so they're a country we are watching to see how that will develop. Financial literacy is real, man. And so I'll take this. I'll take it. Think about it and see what's applicable and what can be done about it. This one, I'm not going beyond that. When it comes to finances, I'm like, ready to be taught.
That one you agree?
I haven't agreed, ready to be taught. Yes,
moving around too much?
Yes, that one might not apply to me, but it applies to certain parties in our country. Yes. And so we are poor because there are certain people who insist on moving around everywhere, doing nothing useful. Yes, other than making too much noise. So that one I vouch for.
And staying married.
And divorce.
It depends. If you manage to take half or take more than half, then you should be okay.
Sit down in one place.
You should be okay. And it depends on who you married. Yes. Sometimes divorce you might be divorcing Anyway, let me not be flippant about it. Marriage is not about just finances.
So, your name again popped up in the news last week from the Court of Appeal. Big decision. NGCDF, 3 judges of the Court of Appeal say this thing, NG, unconstitutional. Then, in fact, we remembered many years before it became NGCDF, it was CDF, and Wajiro Gekonyo and others had gone to court and it had been declared unconstitutional. Now, this one has been declared. What is unconstitutional this time?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, let's take a step back.
Yes.
How did we end up in the Court of Appeal? Who took who to the Court of Appeal?
Now where to start? Other than to say that advocacy, activism, transformation you play the long game. Because we first went to court in 2011 on the CDF. And like you said, in 2013, we got a resounding judgment, actually a landmark judgment. And then our parliament, in all their lack of wisdom, decided to challenge the High Court's ruling on the constitutionality of CDF. And our argument was CDF was a good idea in its day because at that time, development money went to Nairobi and a few other politically connected areas. So there were parts of this country that had no development. So when Morioki Karoe, the then MP, I think of Kinangop, mooted the CDF, he had a good basis, and he has a very good book where he talks about attending national days and hearing promises about development coming, and it never came. And his people thought he was lying. So a good idea comes at the right time, and CDF was that. But with the passage of the Constitution, this idea of money being spent at the constituency level, money being spent under the care or guidance or patronage or whatever, or chairmanship.
Oversight.
No, they don't. Well, of the MP and undertaking various functions which change depending on the mood of Parliament or depending on the latest court ruling, that was overtaken by devolution because devolution shares money to all parts of the country. And the role of Parliament then becomes to oversight that and to ensure that the money is well spent and to ensure that the laws of devolution are well crafted.
Yeah.
But when they have a vested interest in their own fund that continues to grow as the budget grows, they are distracted. And you've seen Parliament using CDF to blackmail Treasury. They have a perverse incentive to ensure the budget keeps growing so that their 2.5% of the national budget can keep growing. So it really undermines the functional roles, it undermines separation of powers, it undermines the constitutional design of devolution.
Okay.
So, yeah. So maybe the last point is we used public interest litigation, which was provided for in the Constitution of Kenya. It wasn't there before. But Parliament have used their power of their past, their legislative power, to subvert these rulings. So as we get rulings, they change the law and then kind of say, well, we've changed the law, so now it's okay.
Now we are conforming.
Exactly. But all they are doing is trying to hide this political /fund.
Okay.
So CDF is good for local governance, but the role of the MP is a problem and they need to get out. And it needs to be spent either at the national level or at the county level. There is no development unit called the constituency.
Okay. Let me ask, because I think then also it plays heavily on what the court decided a couple of days ago. That we had been told already by the committee that the Member of Parliament actually doesn't play a role in terms of how this fund then will be spent. They may have representation during the meetings, but in terms of deciding how, it's really not within the committee. That the member of parliament. But we also see that there is still an amount of influence that is played at that level. Now, knowing that, what has the court then said very clearly then that would quash any of that influence or any of that overarching fear that, if we don't do this, we could be in a spot of trouble from the side of the member of parliament?
Yeah. And thanks. The court had to dig in between, it's like hidden in between the lines and in between the dots. So if you look at the ruling, you're actually going to see that the court has taken time to unpack the role of the member of parliament. So first of all, like I said, they have said that the constituency is not a unit of development. So appropriating money...
This is according to the Constitution?
Yes, because we have 2 levels of government.
Okay.
We don't have 3. And so MPs with the CDF, even the Roads Maintenance Levy Fund, and if you've been listening to them, there are other funds they've been trying to build around this constituency level. And the court has told them repeatedly that the constituency is not a unit of development. It is an electoral unit. It's not an administrative development unit. The other thing is, in this intricate structure where they appoint certain members to the committee, the court has then gone in and said that committee is an implementation body. So to the extent that the member of parliament is appointing, then that also constitutes being part of implementation. And members of parliament have a representative role, they have a legislative role, they have an oversight role. They do not have an implementation role, so that you have separation of powers.
Okay.
So the court has said there is a separation. There needs to be a separation between the executive, between the judiciary, and between parliament, so that in our democracy you have checks and balances. They have also said that when money cannot be appropriated for this NGCDF fund prior to the division of revenue, because what it means is that national government is using this provision called national interest to hive off money that could go to the counties. So this has been litigated and judged. It was determined also in the Supreme Court with regard to the CDF. But it's parliamentary impunity. Why is Parliament? The question becomes, in fact, you could flip it and say, what problem is Parliament trying to cure?
We'll come into that and see what CDF has done, what arguments we're hearing from those who are in Parliament, those who support CDF. But I just want to take a step back. After the first declaration that CDF was unconstitutional, then there was the rewriting of the law and the redesign of this. It was called NGCDF. So it was the national government saying, we as the national government have development responsibilities to do. And responsibility
we as who?
As national government.
That's a very amorphous term. And the ruling actually says it's a problem to have a fund that is so obscure.
Hold on, let me finish.
In its objects. What do you mean by national government?
There are 2 levels of government.
Executive? Do you mean executive?
There are 2 levels of government.
Do you mean the executive of parliament?
Hold on. So there are 2 levels of government.
There are 2 levels of government.
So there's a county government.
Exactly.
And there's a national government. Both have the development functions.
Functional roles.
Yes.
Let's be clear in language.
Okay. Functional roles of development. The national government comes and says, now, for us to, how we want to do our development, we want to take our development down to levels. And let's create the National Government Constituency Development Fund, just to mirror what was there before. That's why they created the NGCDF, right? The NGCDF.
Let's stop there. You're totally misrepresenting.
What happened?
The national government did not create CDF, Parliament did. At no point did national government ever create CDF.
Who took the bill to Parliament?
It was a member of parliament.
Who?
Like I said, Muriuki
No.
Karoe.
CDF. NGCDF.
NGCDF.
When it was renamed NGCDF.
There was a committee of parliament headed by Moses Lenoset. I'm wondering whether the first one was by Ekwe Ethuro and then Lenoset, I think, who were the chairs of what is called the constituency fund. It's CFC. There's a constituency fund committee, which is the parliamentary committee that kind of oversights CDF. Now, that committee is the one that is reviews the law. It reviews the law.
So that's
it does the
that
public engagement.
Yes.
It crafts the law, and then it tables the law. And then they have a debate inside Parliament about, should we appropriate this money for ourselves?
Or not?
Should we increase the amount? And then they all say yes, and they pass the bill. And then, if you note in our suit, the CS of Treasury and the Attorney General sided with us. They sided with us and said, we support the petitioners on this one, that CDF is unconstitutional. So I do not know whose advice Parliament is listening to.
Okay. Let's look at...
Not the AGs.
Okay.
And not the National Treasury.
No, the Treasury was with us. For once, we cross hairs with the Treasury quite a lot. But on this one, we were like, yeah, stick to the law.
Okay. So the law is... I mean, I hate to say it, but here it goes. The law is very clear now about this, right? Coming from this ruling. But then we also know that there will probably, you can be guaranteed that there will be backlash to this from members of parliament, especially because what it does, we've seen that NGCDF, whether they sit on committees for decision or not, that it allows them to create their own kind of fiefdoms in terms of what then they're able to do. For them to let go of this is going to be a very, very serious fight. What does it portend from where you see? Because I don't imagine that you would have gone to court not taking into consideration the backlash that would come as a result of a ruling like this.
Well, no, I think when there is injustice and injustice prevails or is being advanced, when you have forms of oppression, we have a duty to resist. And when you do in your resistance, of course, you'll do a bit of scenario setting, but you have a duty to resist. You anticipate there will be backlash. The backlash is likely to be more on the judiciary. And we therefore cannot say, well, we can't challenge CDF and ask the judiciary to proclaim itself on the Constitution for fear of backlash from Parliament. That is a national condition of us having Parliament and an executive who do not want to, who do not subscribe to rule of law. And that is the problem we are trying to cure. That is why Gen Zs were on the street, resisting impunity. So the backlash comes with the territory. But more to what you're saying, might we have a scenario where they recraft and keep recrafting? We go to the Supreme Court, because with CDF, we had a good ruling, went to the appeal, not such a good ruling, went to the Supreme Court, had a resounding ruling that killed CDF. But in the meantime, they've then recrafted, they have NGCDF.
Yes.
And they, then now we are in appeal and, expecting...
There's a next step.
The next step.
Still open, the Supreme Court.
Of course it is. But we learned something. Number one is our remedies were crafted very resoundingly. The way this bill, the ruling is crafted, the wording on the termination of this arrangement is replete. I do not believe they have anywhere to hide. Whatever they craft will likely be unconstitutional and contrary to this, because the court went into the detail of into what they called the level of government, the issue of subsidiarity, because they were arguing that national government can then undertake its projects. So they've been very clear on the level of government. They've been very clear on subsidiarity. They've been very clear on the functional roles. They've been very clear on separation of powers. They've been very clear that not only the CDF, but other funds like it. So now we go for NGAF, which is a bit touchy because we want money to go into gender. But we don't want that money to go through the the women rep or whoever. They're going for the MCA's fund, the Ward Development Fund. And of course, that puts to rest the quest for senators to get their own fund. Because the oversight role of Parliament is conducted within Parliament, within the committees. And the committees are well-resourced. In fact, members of Parliament are well-resourced. They have offices, they have constituency offices, they have good salaries, they have all these allowances that allow them to move up and down. They have
budgets for that, for travel and all.
They have budgets to do all their work. So the way we framed the remedies, and we were assisted by Dr. Mutaha Kangu, who is, of course, a devolution expert who has advised us right through. And when we looked at things up to the Supreme Court, we were like, what did we miss? And he helped us develop a paper on remedies, that when you go to the court, you need remedies that assist the court to make a very clear decision. So one, the language of the ruling is clear on the unconstitutionality. It's also clear there's no space. So what we expect to see is a backlash against the court. But that's not only because of CDF. That is going to be because the court has pronounced itself on several of the unconstitutional and irregular schemes of Kenya Kwisha, such as, of course, there was SHIF. SHIF is now, I believe, implemented pending the determination in court. There was the housing levy that had a lot of back and forth.
The budget.
Pardon?
The Finance Act.
Oh, yes, the Finance Act is the big one. So we have a regime that is trying to work outside the law. And, it's hard to understand why. Because the law gives a lot of room to execute whatever development plans you have. But possibly because of the haste to get into deals like this Adani deal, where you bring in people through special purpose or, kind of single-sourced PPPs and all this real abuse of our laws. And because Parliament, in its wisdom, enacted a law that allows government to privatize, hey, let's be very clear. Parliament is going to come for the judiciary because we have a regime, the Zakayo regime, that wants to privatize, asset strip, and own assets that belong to Kenya through shadowy companies. This happened with Safaricom during the privatization. There's a company called Mobitelea. And try though we did, and I remember Africog, I remember David D. Speaking up about who holds shares in that company. Because all you need is to take a floundering public asset, sell it off to a private company, get some politically connected people to buy shares in that company, so that they will now become beneficiaries of whatever investment is going to be made. Because in the privatization process, there's also money from government that comes in to facilitate the process. There's also now you have bought shares into a company that is being bought out internationally. So really, you are buying shares into a company for free.
Let's take a break. 27 minutes to 8. Wanjiru Gekonyo is our guest this morning. She's a transformative governance advocate and coach. We are talking about the recent ruling judgment of the Court of Appeal that declared NGCDF unconstitutional. She is among those that were participating in this. So in this Court of Appeal, what were you? Respondent, applicant?
We are the key petitioner.
You are the petitioner in the Court of Appeal?
Right.
Okay. So this is what happened. The court declared it unconstitutional. Now we come back and ask ourselves, okay, so CDF as is structured presently, is unconstitutional. Do people feel CDF or do they not feel CDF? And then what happens thereafter?
And let me correct, it's the High Court. It's not the Court of Appeal.
It's a High Court.
It's
Oh,
a
yes,
High
High
Court.
Court. Three judges
This
of
is
a
the High Court.
Yes, yes, yes.
It's a High Court ruling.
Indeed, yes. Okay, back shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Kenyans abroad